The smell of disinfectant and industrial coffee couldn't mask the desperation that clung to Maya's second-hand blazer like smoke from a dying cigarette. She clutched her worn leather portfolio, a graduation gift from her late mother, and tried to steady her trembling hands as she surveyed the gleaming marble lobby of Morrison Industries. 27 years old, 3 months behind on rent, and down to her last $12. This interview wasn't just an opportunity, it was her lifeline thrown into churning waters that threatened to pull her under forever. The receptionist barely glanced up from her pristine desk, her manicured nails clicking against the keyboard with practiced indifference. "Maya Rodriguez?" she asked, not waiting for confirmation. "Conference room B, 20th floor, the elevator's to your right." Maya's stomach churned as the elevator climbed, each floor bringing her closer to what felt like Judgment Day. She'd rehearsed her answers 100 times in her cramped studio apartment, practicing in front of a cracked mirror that reflected not just her image but years of struggle, sacrifice, and unrelenting hope. The janitorial position wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work with benefits, as something she hadn't had since the diner where she'd waited tables closed down 6 months ago. The 20th floor was a world apart from the utilitarian spaces she was used to, all glass walls, modern art, and an atmosphere that whispered of power and success. Maya followed the corridor, checking room numbers, her second-hand heels clicking against polished marble that probably cost more per square foot than she made in a month. Conference room B was supposed to be here, but the letters on the frosted glass door read Executive Boardroom. Maya hesitated, glancing at her phone to double-check the time. She was 15 minutes early, and maybe they'd moved the location. The receptionist had seemed distracted, and mistakes happened. Taking a deep breath, Maya pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. The room was magnificent and intimidating in equal measure. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, while a massive oak table dominated the center of the space. But what made Maya's heart sink was the realization that she wasn't alone. 12 people in expensive suits occupied chairs around the table, their conversations dying as they turned to stare at the unexpected intruder. Heat flooded Maya's cheeks as she realized her mistake. These weren't other job candidates, these were executives, board members, people whose yearly bonuses probably exceeded her lifetime earnings. At the head of the table sat a man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Even in her panic, Maya recognized him from the company website, James Morrison, the CEO whose grandfather had built this empire from nothing. "I'm so sorry," Maya stammered, backing toward the door. "I think I'm in the wrong stay." The word came from Morrison, quiet but carrying absolute authority. The entire room fell silent, waiting. Maya froze, her hand on the door handle, uncertain whether she'd heard correctly. Morrison leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. "You're here for the janitorial position interview." Maya nodded, unable to trust her voice. She felt like a deer caught in headlights, exposed and vulnerable under the collective gaze of people who existed in a different universe from hers. "I'm curious," Morrison continued, his tone conversational. "Tell me, Miss Rodriguez." "Maya Rodriguez." "Tell me, Maya, what do you see when you look around this room?" The question caught her off guard. Maya glanced around, taking in the luxury that surrounded them, the expensive artwork, the crystal water glasses, the polished surfaces that reflected wealth at every turn. But that wasn't what struck her most. "I see," she began slowly, finding her voice, "a room full of people who've forgotten what it's like to worry about next month's rent." The words came out before she could stop them, and she immediately regretted her honesty. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize." Morrison's voice was firm. "Continue." Maya looked directly at him, something shifting inside her. If she was going to lose this opportunity anyway, she might as well be honest. "I see people who've never had to choose between buying medication and paying for groceries, who've never worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, who've never had to explain to their children why the electricity got turned off again." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could feel her chances evaporating like morning dew, but she couldn't stop herself. "I see people who probably think poverty is a choice, a character flaw, something that happens to others because they don't work hard enough. Her voice grew stronger with each word. But I also see people who have the power to change that, who could make a real difference if they remembered what it felt like to be human. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably, another cleared his throat. But Morrison remained perfectly still, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. "You're right," he said finally. The simple admission sent ripples of shock around the table. "We have forgotten." He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "My grandfather started this company with $50 and a dream. He worked 16-hour days, slept on this factory floor when he couldn't afford rent. Somewhere along the way, we lost that story." Morrison turned back to the room. "Maya, I have a proposition for you. I'm not going to offer you the janitorial position." Maya's heart plummeted, but he continued, "Instead, I want you to work directly with me. Help us remember what we've forgotten. Help us understand the impact of our decisions on people like you." "I don't understand," Maya whispered. "I want you to be our director of community impact. Your job would be to ensure that every policy we implement, every decision we make, takes into account the real people it affects. The single mothers working 2 jobs, the students choosing between textbooks and meals, the elderly choosing between heating and medication." The room erupted in murmurs, but Morrison raised his hand for silence. "The salary is $120,000 annually, plus benefits and equity in the company." Maya's legs nearly gave out. The amount was more than she made in the past 3 years combined. But more than the money, it was the recognition, the validation that her struggles had meaning, that her perspective had value. "Why?" she managed to ask. Morrison smiled for the first time since she'd entered the room. "Because my grandfather used to say that a company that forgets its humanity loses its soul. Today, you reminded me that we're in danger of losing ours." 3 months later, Maya stood in that same boardroom, presenting Morrison Industries' new Employee Assistance Program, Affordable Housing Initiative, and Scholarship Fund for Underprivileged Students. The scared young woman who'd stumbled into the wrong room had found not just a job, but a purpose that would ripple outward, touching thousands of lives. Sometimes the wrong turn leads you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes sitting at the wrong table is the first step toward changing the world.